Dune, Berserk, Hunter x Hunter, A Song of Ice and Fire, all masterpieces, and none have a conclusion to the series. These are just some franchises I feel confident enough to come out here and yabber on. But obviously there's more that avid readers talk about in high regard, like The Wheel of Time, that never reached what every page was leading up to. These four immediately came to me when thinking about the importance of that closure. Four different genres: sci-fi, a seinen, a shonen, and of course A Song of Ice and Fire being a fantasy. All very well written by people who define the industry. Gauging by a lot of my comments from previous videos, it does seem like a lot of you A Song of Ice and Fire fans don't care for animated work, don't know if your stance carries on to Japanese manga, but Berserk is a very heavy manga that can be hard to stomach at times for all the gruesomeness. And Hunter x Hunter kicks off with a bright and youthful spirit, but quickly shifts towards more mature themes. A lot of Japanese manga is quantity over quality, but not with these two serializations. It takes a bit to get used to the black and white Japanese comic style, but once you're in, you'll be in awe that one man can write and create the art at the same time. Most times releasing chapters on a weekly basis until the serialization is complete. Japanese work ethic is something else. Well, I'm sure many who haven't even checked out the series would have heard that creator of Berserk, Kentaro Miura, recently passed at 54 because of heart complications. I've never seen a fandom so respectful after an author's passing. You rarely see people bitching about having his notes released or given another writer to complete the story. The vast majority are sharing their gratitude, mentioning how sad they are to see him go so soon, and that's it. Very different than what I see going on with George Martin and his readers. Seeing how many people bring up his age is kinda gross. Berserk fans may never see the climactic fight between protagonist Guts and antagonist Griffith, but the very last panel that he drew is beautiful. Almost like it was expected to be the last chapter ever. We got so used to the chaos and horror of this terrifying world, and then for a brief moment we're treated to a blissful moment in Kentaro Miura's art style. Guts cutting down Griffith wouldn't have been close to this impactfulness. The last few chapters before Miura's passing all had this peaceful atmosphere. I'm not saying a good story needs a happy ending, but for Guts, his world couldn't be left so empty. There's still a lot of pain and anger in him with this forced ending, but the characters come so far from the first chapter, dating back to 1988. 34 years of serialization, with a ton of breaks and hiatuses in between, which is rare in Japan. Just shows how much the publishers respected his work, because this detail of artwork is not common at all in manga. It's usually more simplified to fit the weekly deadline. Miura with Berserk showed that a story is still a masterpiece even without an ending. This unfortunately doesn't apply to all works though. Some stories solely rely on the plot to carry things. Those kind of books need an ending to keep the mob satisfied. I'm talking about plot-driven novels like Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. Others that shine in their escapism through the world building and characters can really go without an ending, and the experience will still be memorable. There's a lot of mystery behind some of the plot lines and lore behind A Song of Ice and Fire, but not getting that final installment wouldn't be all that bad. George R. R. Martin will most definitely finish up The Winds of Winter one of these days, but expecting the final planned book, A Dream of Spring, is just asking for disappointment. The Winds of Winter should show which direction Martin will choose regarding Daenerys, Jon, and the newest player in the Game of Thrones, Rhaegar's supposed true heir, Aegon VI. The rest we can speculate about. As much as I would like to see what Martin has in store for Euron Greyjoy, he was brought in so late in the story that the Starks and Targaryens just have to have the priority, with so much dedicated to them from the early chapters. A lot of you will disagree with me here, but years ago when I accepted there won't be an ending for masterpieces like Berserk and Hunter x Hunter, it didn't take anything away from the work itself. It didn't feel like wasted time or anything, because of how good the high moments were. I would love to be wrong about Hunter x Hunter, since Togashi is still alive and kicking, but his health and track record over the past, 5 years? Kinda says it all. Fact is, Martin's life is far more fun and simpler, advising on projects than writing a conclusion for a very complex fantasy. Working with game studios to help with lore, showing up at conventions, or being on standby to see new HBO shows through has zero pressure. That won't hurt his legacy if they fail. A Dream of Spring being as bad as the final season of Game of Thrones, as unlikely as that will be, will. His insane success is happening in his later years, so he's definitely enjoying the fruits of a long writing career. How many fantasy writers become household names? Oh, and rich as hell. The vocal, annoying part of the fandom continually presses Martin for updates because of how well written the story is and how much they love it, but at the same time became a meme, where every troll responds to everything he says with, "Where's wins?" 10 years is a long time to write a book, but with everything he set up in the last 2 books, I don't know how the final 2 novels will complete the story. They'll have to be real chunky. Martin probably regrets all the updates claiming how much he's written and all the expected release dates that have come and gone over the decade. The wild cliffhangers do require some answers in the form of a sequel for me to comfortably recommend A Song of Ice and Fire. But after Winds, hopefully things will be less confusing than with Dune. Things don't need to be as hopeful as Berserk after a story covered in darkness. But maybe just some signs of where things are heading for the main players, so we can at least have some fun speculating. Fans of Hunter x Hunter have been a lot more patient with Togashi than with Martin, even though Martin's like 20 years older. Togashi will write small author comments with each chapter release, with a lot being pretty grim, mentioning his health issues. It's been over 3 years since he's put out a chapter, which is 15 pages, mostly consisting of artwork. Though lately, Togashi has kind of broken the manga mold of art-to-text ratio. I've never seen another author have full text pages. The original objective of the main character was solved years ago, so I'll feel no ways bring up the spoiler that Gon finally does find his father. This plot was never as important as the character-driven aspects in the first place. I don't think people should be saddened by Hunter x Hunter ending where it currently stands, even if there are a lot of readers that still want to see everything play out. The main character hasn't been seen in how long now? With the focus shifting towards the revenge plot of Kurapika. The situation is so similar to Berserk, except the main character's story arc is pretty much complete. Laser focus on vengeance for so long is so close, but finding new fulfilling parts of life. That doesn't sound like a bad place to end things. The Dune series is a whole other controversial story. Dune's last published book by the original series' author was by far the weirdest one. 1985's Chapter House Dune had a lot of rough personal life stuff happening during this period for the genre-defining author. I can't even imagine what Frank Herbert was going through during the time, because I know he just lost his wife to cancer and would have his life taken to the same bullshit disease like a year after this book's publication. So it is hard ripping apart his final mark. Chapter House Dune is the 6th of the 7 planned book series. Frank Herbert didn't live to complete the final installment it was building up to though. It's unfortunate that there are multiple points in the story where things could have ended at a better place. The 6th book just happened to be the only one, in my opinion, to end in an awkward time in the story. I doubt the Denis Villeneuve films will ever touch this territory, but I guess I should try to avoid spoilers just in case he's feeling ambitious. Yeah, the 6th book is weird, man. I love the Dune series, but this was very hard to get through because of the pacing. A lot of important themes going all the way back to the first novel were developed here, something that was desperately needed for the world building. But every chapter was going around in circles. Then finally at the end, something completely new and story-changing is introduced awkwardly. It's just set up for a book that will never be made, as much as the author's son wants you to believe that he himself faithfully concludes it. His son teamed up with another author to scour through Daddy's notes to make a couple bucks, claiming to write the ending decades later. Dune ends with book 6 for me, but I would have been cool with him stopping at book 1, 2, 3, 4, even 5 that was setting up a new trilogy. So as much as I don't think it really needed a quote-unquote ending, I would say just stop at book 4 or 5, unless you're really curious and bored. I still recommend this masterpiece of a series. Not coming here to make a controversial contrarian take, I'm mostly here to say a lot of stories that won't end. Checking them out is still worth, especially Berserk, and not just for the crazy intricate art. Miura could do it all. He even somehow unintentionally made the final page look like a final page.